Objective Norfolk was not a neat battlefield waiting under a spotlight. It was a wide, dark battle space in the Iraqi desert, marked less by natural features than by grid lines, burning wrecks, and the movement of armored formations trying to finish what 73 Easting had opened. The 2D Armored Cavalry Regiment had torn into the Iraqi defense on the afternoon of February 26, 1991, but the enemy system had not vanished. Remnants of the Tawakalna Division, elements of the Iraqi 12th Armored Division, and other forces still occupied the ground ahead. By the morning of February 27th, the 1st Infantry Division was passing through the cavalry and driving into a fight that would be larger, darker, and in some ways more confusing than the battle that had just become famous. If you would like to move beyond the podcast, you can see my available books at militaryauthor.me. And at trackpads.com, you will find magazines and galleries with hundreds of thousands of photos and videos to explore. The name Norfolk can mislead the imagination because it sounds like a town or a single point on a map. It was really an objective area, a piece of desert assigned meaning by commanders who needed to organize a corps-sized attack across land with few landmarks. To follow the action without a map, picture the 2D Armored Cavalry Regiment forward in the west to east attack, having punched into the Iraqi defensive seam at 73 Easting. Behind it came the Big Red 1, the 1st Infantry Division, mechanized and heavy with tanks, Bradleys, artillery, engineers, and infantry. Its job was to move through the cavalry's battle space and continue eastward into the remaining Iraqi positions. The handoff turned a cavalry fight into a division fight. The battlefield the division entered was already wounded. Iraqi tanks and armored carriers burned where the cavalry had destroyed them. Bunkers and revetments lay smashed or abandoned. Groups of prisoners moved rearward, while other Iraqi soldiers remained hidden, disoriented, or still willing to fight. Smoke and dust hung in the air, and darkness turned wreckage into shapes that could not always be trusted. Some soldiers later remembered the strange glow of the battlefield, with burning Iraqi vehicles throwing light across the desert and silhouetting American armor as it moved forward. It was a scene that could seem almost unreal, but there was nothing theatrical about it. Fires that illuminated the way also marked death, confusion, and the broken machinery of a collapsing army. Night fighting gave the Americans advantages, but it also multiplied danger. The 1st Infantry Division brought thermal sights, disciplined crews, and the confidence of an army trained to fight after dark. Iraqi crews generally could not match that night fighting ability, especially after weeks of air attack and disrupted command. But darkness does not simply favor the better-equipped side and then politely disappear. It hides friendly vehicles, distorts distance, and makes identification harder when wrecks, prisoners, live enemies, and moving columns share the same ground. A gunner could see heat through a sight and still need judgment. A commander could hear reports from adjacent units and still wonder whether the next shape ahead belonged to the enemy, the cavalry, or another American unit pushing through the same storm. The 1st Infantry Division's attack into Objective Norfolk showed why a mechanized division is more than a collection of tanks. Abrams tanks gave the division heavy striking power, but Bradleys, infantry, artillery, engineers, scouts, air defense, and support units all mattered. Infantry could deal with bunkers, trenches, and surrendering enemy soldiers in ways tanks alone could not. Engineers helped with obstacles, mines, and the passage of vehicles through damaged ground. Artillery reached beyond direct fire, suppressing enemy positions and disrupting attempts to form a new line. Logistics kept fuel, ammunition, maintenance, and recovery moving forward. The division's power came from the combination, and that combination had to function at night, in motion, across a battlefield another unit had just fought through. The Iraqi defense at Norfolk was battered but still dangerous. Some Iraqi units had lost cohesion after the air campaign, the Western envelopment, and the shock at 73 Easting. Others were caught moving, withdrawing, or trying to reorient under pressure. Tanks in revetments, armored vehicles in scattered positions, artillery pieces, trucks, and infantry strongpoints all appeared in different parts of the battle area. A collapsing defense can be especially unpredictable because it no longer behaves like the clean enemy drawn in a plan. Some pockets surrender, some fire suddenly, some flee through friendly lines, and some remain in place because no order to move has reached them. The Big Red 1 had to fight an enemy that was no longer fully coherent, but was not yet harmless. As the division advanced, the battle became a test of tempo after breakthrough. The cavalry had created the opening, but an opening loses value if the following force cannot exploit it quickly. The 1st Infantry Division had to keep moving before the Iraqis could withdraw cleanly or form another defensive layer. That required commanders to accept uncertainty without becoming reckless. The unit had to move fast enough to maintain pressure, but carefully enough to avoid stumbling into friendly vehicles, prisoners, mines, or surviving Iraqi positions. This balance is one of the hardest parts of armored warfare. Speed wins only when it remains organized. Disorder moving fast is not tempo. It is simply danger spreading across the desert. Objective Norfolk was also the moment when the scale of 7 Corps' armored blow became clearer. The Corps was no longer merely searching for the Republican Guard. It was now inside the fight, bringing division-level combat power through the gap created by the cavalry. The 1st Infantry Division's attack was tied to the movement of other heavy formations pressing across the broader battlefield, including the 3rd D Armored Division and 1st Armored Division in the Corps' wider drive. Franks had wanted a mailed fist, not a series of isolated punches. Norfolk was part of that fist closing. Each division's fight mattered not only for the ground immediately ahead, but for whether Iraqi armored forces could escape, regroup, or survive as organized formations. The violence at Norfolk could be sudden and overwhelming. American crews identified Iraqi vehicles through thermals and engaged them at ranges and in conditions where many Iraqi crews were at a severe disadvantage. Bradleys and tanks worked through enemy positions, while artillery and other support added weight. Some Iraqi soldiers surrendered in large numbers when they understood that resistance was collapsing around them. Others died in vehicles or positions that were struck before they could answer effectively. The outcome reflected American advantages in training, sensors, leadership, and combined arms, but it should not be made sterile. A night battle full of burning vehicles and confused movement was not a demonstration. It was a deadly human event, fought by men inside machines amid fear, exhaustion, and limited understanding.
The confusion of Norfolk also foreshadowed one of the Gulf War's hardest subjects, the problem of fratricide. Fast armored forces, poor visibility, overlapping movements, similar vehicle shapes, thermal images, dust, smoke, and shifting front lines created conditions in which friendly fire became a real and tragic danger. That does not erase the division's achievement, but it complicates any simple celebration of modern warfare. Technology helped American crews dominate the Iraqi army, yet it did not produce a perfectly transparent battlefield. Commanders and crews still had to identify, communicate, and restrain fire under pressure. Objective Norfolk showed both sides of modern mechanized power, the ability to destroy an enemy system at speed, and the continuing risk that speed and confusion could harm one's own side.
For the soldiers moving through Norfolk, the battle must have felt less like a single engagement than a sequence of violent rooms opening in the dark. One position would be cleared or bypassed, then another set of heat signatures would appear ahead. A group of prisoners might emerge, while firing continued somewhere nearby. A burning vehicle might illuminate the ground, but also obscure what lay beyond it. A unit might receive a report of enemy tanks, only to discover wrecks, abandoned vehicles, or a threat already destroyed by another American element. This is how large armored battles are often experienced from inside them. The grand design exists, but the crew lives in the next decision, the next report, the next target, and the next patch of ground. Objective Norfolk deserves more attention because it prevents 73 Easting from becoming a self-contained legend. The cavalry battle was dramatic and tactically brilliant, but it was not the end of the Republican Guard fight. Norfolk was the exploitation, the continuation, the proof that the pass-through could turn reconnaissance success into division-level destruction. It also reminds us that armored warfare is not defined only by the first unit to make contact. The follow-on force must be able to move through the opening, absorb the battlefield's disorder, and keep striking while the enemy is still stunned. Many armies have achieved breakthroughs they could not exploit. At Norfolk, the coalition showed that its strength lay not only in the point of impact, but in the machinery that followed. In the longer story of tanks, Objective Norfolk belongs to the mature era of armored battle. The old dream from Cambrai had been to break the line and move into the open, but early tanks lacked reliability, communications, and support to make that dream fully real. By 1991, the problem had changed but not disappeared. The line could be broken, but the attackers still had to pass forces through, fight at night, maintain identification, keep artillery and logistics aligned, and prevent local success from dissolving into confusion. Norfolk showed a modern answer: heavy mechanized formations using thermal sights, radios, artillery, engineers, and trained initiative to continue the fight beyond the famous breakthrough. It was eerie, sprawling, and costly, but it was also decisive in keeping 7th Corps moving. By the time the fighting at Objective Norfolk subsided, Iraqi armored resistance in that sector had been badly damaged, and the Corps' momentum carried forward toward the next blows. The Republican Guard was not yet a memory, and the war's final armored clashes still lay ahead, especially at Medina Ridge. But Norfolk had done the work that history too often hides behind the brighter name of 73 Easting. It turned the cavalry's opening into a division's advance. It carried the battle through darkness and wreckage. It revealed both the power and the danger of modern mechanized combat at speed. If 73 Easting was the door kicked open in the storm, Objective Norfolk was the heavy force pouring through, refusing to let the enemy close it again.
You've been listening to Famous Tank Battles. These battles were never just about machines. They were about doctrine, terrain, firepower, logistics, and the hard problem of turning shock into victory. For more military history writing and books, visit militaryauthor.me. And for magazines, podcasts, and a massive archive of military photos and video, visit trackpads.com. Thanks for listening.